There's a lot at stake right now in the presidential election. If Joe Biden pulls this one out, he's going to empower this bureaucratic blob, the deep state, the administrative state. And all these little experts are going to write lots of laws well past the halls of Congress. They're going to write it in the EPA or in the FDA or wherever, in all the alphabet agencies, to run your life for you. And they're going to try to steal it. If they don't win it outright, they'll try to steal it. Maybe you heard this story. Actually, you did, because I mentioned it on the show the other day. The other day, postal worker comes out and alleges fraud. Alleges that his supervisor told him, pick up ballots that are illegal, deliver them to me. So then the Washington Post came out and said, not true. This postal worker has recanted. This is fake news. Don't spread this story. Well, now, I guess that was supposed to be the end of the story, except that the postal worker came out and he said, I absolutely did not recant, and the Washington Post is lying about me.
I am right at this very moment looking at an article written by Washington Post. It says that I fabricated the allegations of ballot tampering. I'm here to say that I did not recant my statements. That did not happen. That is not what happened. And you will find out tomorrow.
So we'll find out. He's going to release a longer video about this, but it didn't happen. Now, I don't know the entirety of his story, but what I do know is something that I've known for a long time, that the Washington Post is lying about it. The entire establishment press, which is tied into the establishment academy, which is tied into the establishment popular culture, which is tied into the establishment technology, which is tied into the established administrative government and elected politicians. That is what is trying to win this election. It is not about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is nothing. He is totally hollow. If you crack him open, you would find air leaking out. There is nothing inside. He's been an empty suit his whole career. The same goes for Kamala Harris. She's articulated more forcefully certain views. It's only because she's younger. I think she licks her finger, puts it up in the air, figures out which way the wind is blowing. Okay, now there are politicians on the left who have strong views. They will be pulling the strings. Joe Biden has already admitted as much. He's moved so radically to the left just in the issue of abortion. He used to oppose abortion. Now he not only doesn't oppose it, he supports taxpayer-funded abortion with no restrictions. There are these strong-minded characters on the left. One of them would be Stacey Abrams, who is just as much the governor of Georgia as Joe Biden is the president-elect. Stacey Abrams, you remember her, she's come out and said, forget this moderation talk. Forget this talk about the American ideals. What we need is identity politics.
Identity politics is exactly who we are, and it's exactly how we won.
Identity politics. That's exactly how we won. Identity politics, that's how the left win. Now, the trouble, of course, with this is the left didn't just win the election. The left, there was supposed to be a blue wave, remember? The left was supposed to take the Senate. Doesn't look like they did that. And the left was supposed to win big seats in the House. Didn't do that. They lost seats in the House. They may have lost a lot of seats in the House. And they were playing those identity politics. Identity politics is fundamentally opposed to the American and broader Western political tradition. Because what identity politics says is we need to set up essentially a sort of caste system in America, and we're going to judge people based on their oppression, their perceived oppression, whether that's real or imagined, and we're going to give people certain privileges. So, for instance, we're going to give black people certain privileges in university admissions and job hiring, and they're going to get those privileges because of the legacy of slavery. Now, you might ask, what about black people who do not descend from slaves, like, for instance, Barack Obama or Kamala Harris, both of whom descended not from slaves, but from slave owners? Do they have a disadvantage? Are they oppressed? Neither of those people seem particularly oppressed to me. One was the president. One might possibly become the vice president. She's a sitting U.S. senator. I don't think, how are they oppressed? Well, because of their identity. Not because of the facts of their life, but because of their identity. Pits Americans against one another and pits all Americans against their own history. That's the point. And identity politics, unfortunately, is very effective. And what's interesting is, for all the talk of white supremacy and white nationalism, these sorts of things, white people in America have a very, very low racial consciousness. There was a report came out, I think from Pew Research, that showed that for every major ethnic group, racial consciousness ranks above 50%. That is, greater than 50% of respondents said that their race is very important to their identity. For black people, this was the strongest, followed by Hispanics and Asians. For white people, racial identity was 15%. It's way, 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 way low, which is perfectly fine by me. If you were to ask me, Michael, who are you? What are you? What would I say? I'd say I'm Catholic, I'm American, I'm Sicilian, I get a little of that. I guess I've got some English in there. I'm a cigar smoker, I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker, right? And white guy would be somewhere pretty far down on the list. But what Stacey Abrams is saying is, no, you're a white guy, buddy. White is number one. Your racial identity, which she is constructing for us, that has got to be number one. Now, that kind of radical politics didn't win the last election. I mean, when you say identity politics is how we won, how'd you win? The guy that you maybe elected president is the oldest, whitest dude in America, right? So I don't, if that's the identity, I guess then the Democrats are going back to their roots. But in the future, perhaps it will work. I mean, there is something to this idea. And Michael Moore was saying this. Democrats need to become socialists. They need to just admit that they're socialists, stop pretending they're not socialists. And he's been harangued for this. But Michael Moore actually gets politics pretty well. He was one of the few people on the left who called Trump. And there is a phenomenon going on right now. My friend Spencer Clavin over at Claremont and the American Mind, he pointed this out to me the other day. We were discussing the woke people and the red-pilled conservatives and the idea that the kind of establishment consensus on both the left and the right are cracking. And he said, well, Michael, isn't it interesting that the two terms that we're using for people who realize that the old consensus is broken and that some new kind of political coalition needs to form, on the left we say they're woke, and on the right we say they're red-pilled. And both terms imply a kind of waking up out of a dreamlike state, waking up and seeing reality anew for the first time. And I think there's something to that. I think Democrats have behaved like socialists for a very long time, and they just haven't admitted it to themselves. And I think that conservatives have convinced themselves of a lot of sort of slogans and bumper stickers that aren't necessarily true. And they tilt against windmills, and they fight battles that no one really cares about. It's perfectly fine. The liberal establishment is perfectly fine to have conservatives arguing for low taxes. Sometimes the liberal establishment doesn't even mind the low taxes. But the minute you bring up culture, the minute you bring up mass migration, the minute you bring up love of country even, all of a sudden that's a little bit too much. If you enjoyed that break from disinformation, historical revision, and screaming about the end of the world, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another video.